No parent wants to outlive their child, and the pain from having to do so can only be that much more agonizing if the parent believes that their child's death could have been avoided. Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, and today I'm sharing with you an interview I had with a grieving father from Saskatchewan who has been struggling with the loss of his son. On August 15th, 19-year-old Aaron Ogden passed away. Aaron's father, Mark Ogden, has started asking an important question regarding his son's death, and that is, would his son still be alive today if it wasn't for COVID-19 restrictions? Aaron's official cause of death was from a blood clot, but his father feels that Aaron may still be alive today if his son's CT scan, scheduled at the Yorkton Hospital in Saskatchewan, had not been canceled, allegedly due to COVID-19 related reasons. The CT scan was supposed to take place in June, but was canceled, even though on June 20th, Saskatchewan.ca reported that there were only 3 hospitalized coronavirus patients in the entire province. Back in April, CBC reported that an estimated close to 100,000 patients across Canada have had their surgical procedures delayed due to COVID-19. I reached out to Saskatchewan Health Authority to get a better understanding on what type of COVID-19 delays or rules may have been a factor in Aaron's death. And here's how Doug Dow, the communications officer, responded. The Saskatchewan Health Authority extends our sincere condolences to the friends and family of this young man and have been made aware of the tragic situation, as have our operational leaders. We are not able to provide any further details about a specific patient's personal health information, as in any situation where there may have been concerns with the quality of care provided, the SHA starts a review process to determine what may have occurred. Operational leaders have reached out to this family as part of the review process. Losing a child is every parent's worst nightmare. Let's listen to what Mark Ogden explained the circumstances were around Aaron's death and what led him to question if COVID-19 restrictions were responsible.
Well, Aaron he was my 19-year-old son. He was very ambitious, liked to do a lot of hard work. He liked farming, um, and liked vehicles and all the rest of that stuff. Was really looking forward to having a family. That was one big ambition he had. He wanted to have a family and a farm. Those were his dreams. So yeah.
Oh. And so not too long ago, Aaron was in a really bad car accident. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, on December 3rd, he got into a bad accident. He was just traveling to work, forgot something, and so on the highway he tried to turn around. As he turned around, the car that he had passed a little while ago came and hit him in the driver's side door. And it was a pretty severe accident, and had some brain damage and stuff, but yeah, it was pretty harsh. But the thing that happened that kind of affected him later was, when you get hit on the side like that, your body gets jostled from side to side. Your heart is this big muscle on the side, and you could kind of think it just gets hit from one side of your rib cage to the other. And what it did was it weakened the aorta on the bottom. And so they had to go and put a stent in there as well. That was one of the injuries. He had the stent, he had a broken pelvis, and he had a lot of brain damage. And he recovered from all of it, really,
Wow.
quite well, like miraculously. I mean, really, I don't even think he should have made it through. But he did. He did. His appointments and everything were pretty well okay. He went to rehab, he went to therapy. But then, he went for that first CT scan. It was supposed to be scheduled in June. It was scheduled. Everything was on plan. And then he got called and it was canceled. And they said, well, we'll reschedule it, but it never never happened. So.
Okay, so where was that canceled at? Where?
That was canceled in Yorkton, Saskatchewan.
Okay. And was that
at the hospital.
the first of the every 6 month follow-up that the doctor?
That would have been his very first follow-up CT scan to see how the heart stent, the stent in the aorta was doing.
Wow. So he goes in. Did he go in, or he got a call, or?
I think he got a call.
Okay. And do you know if they offered him any alternative, like, oh, we'll call you back in a couple of weeks, or?
Yeah, as far as I know, he just was told that it would be rescheduled, and he never heard back. So from that, I'm not sure what happened. Now I'm going by what he told me, and I mean, when he got back home, he was able to go on his own. He lived with his fiance for a bit, and so I wasn't really involved with all of that. But then when he got into his accident later, maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but when he got into his accident later, he was telling me, I was supposed to have a CT scan in June and they canceled it on me. And so, yeah, that was my first news that something didn't happen.
And so when he said that to you, what was his words about why they canceled the CT scan?
Well,
Did he
it
say
was
why?
canceled. I don't remember if he said specifically, but it was canceled with the COVID and everything else that had been canceled. And I think he did make mention that, COVID, it was canceled because of COVID. And they never called me back, he basically said. So.
All right. And so now after the appointment was canceled, there was another thing that brought him to the hospital, right? So
yeah, he was actually doing really well. He was moving around. He was functioning. He was going from job to job. He was working like construction. It was a little harder on his body, especially like his skeletal body, because he did break his pelvis in that first accident. And so he wanted something a little bit more easy on his body to deal with. So he came to Calgary to work with his brother and sister at a factory that they were all a part of. And he went for a run early one morning and just collapsed. And he threw up, and he couldn't feel his legs, and he couldn't move his legs. And so they took him to the hospital right away. And I talked to the doctor soon after he got to the hospital. The doctor was saying, well, he actually, we think this has to do with the aorta. And that was my first clue that could only mean a blood clot. And
And then that was confirmed that was what had happened, or?
Yeah, it was a blood clot. They went into surgery. They focused mainly on the fact that he couldn't move his legs. So they figured, well, there must have been a blood clot that happened to go to his spinal cord. And they found that blood clot. They also found there was a lot of little blood clots in his kidneys. They felt that they couldn't really do much. It was kind of like a shotgun effect. And you could just imagine just tiny little pieces here and there. They were saying if it was just a big piece, they could get in there and just do something. But with all these little ones. So they cleared out his spinal cord. They found another blood clot that was in his leg during surgery. One leg was colder than the other, so they found that. They took care of it, and they felt everything was moving now and everything was flowing, so they thought that everything would be okay. But the question was always there, would he get his legs back? They weren't really sure. They'd hoped that they were there in time. But by the next morning, he still had no movement, no feeling at all. So it was pretty for sure by that time he's permanently paralyzed.
Wow. And then from that, how long was it until he passed?
Well, altogether, when we went into the hospital until he passed, it was probably about 44 hours. Basically, that blood clot, it was, when you think of that stent is like a small garden hose, and that's the size of it. That's how much blood is flowing through. And that first surgery, they went in and they did an angioplasty on it, and the doctor said, that was closed up from the size of a garden hose, 23 millimeters, to basically the size of your pen would make an ink pen, and that's all that was flowing through there. And so when that exploded, you could just, and they would always do this. They would say showered, and they would do this hand motion. And you get the idea that it just basically went everywhere. So as soon as that happened, when he was jogging, it basically was it was a death sentence at that point. There was, even if they knew the extent of the damage, I really doubt they could have done anything to fix him in all those areas.
So did any of the doctors confirm with you then that the blood clot likely would have been there for, a month or 2 months?
No. And that's kind of the question.
Yeah.
I did ask them. They did make it clear that it could have happened soon. Like it could have been like within the last couple of weeks.
Right.
And if it had happened in the last couple of weeks, that's fine. But, there's also a chance that it could have happened back in June.
Yeah.
And here's the deal: is we have no way of knowing. After he died, I considered, doing an autopsy with him to determine, but nobody can find out. Nobody would be able to tell me how long this blood clot had been there. The most they could do through an autopsy is tell me there was a blood clot.
Which there was.
Yeah, and we already knew that. So, I figured, well, there's no sense in doing more issues and prolonging this. The real question is, when was this blood clot there? And since we can't tell, well, then we do know that there are issues there.
Right.
So how long it has been, we don't know.
Where has this left you now? What are you doing now to try to get more answers for yourself? Who have you reached out to? Who have you heard back from?
The first thing I did was, I put out the question in a Facebook post that, did COVID rules kill my son? And, asking the question basically was, could my son still be alive if, he had been checked on that CT scan? And from there, the Saskatchewan Health Authority, they saw that, and they did reach out to me and told me that, they'd be willing to answer questions or whatever. Basically, they sent an investigator to find out things. And so I talked to her. She didn't really know where this was coming from, but, she's in the process of doing that right now, in the process of investigating and finding out. Hopefully this will be impartial. She is from the SHA. Okay. So we'll see. But I made it clear to her that, okay, I have faith that you're going to do your job and do it well, but I want to see some results here. First of all, somebody needs to be held to account on these things. I've lost my son, and I don't think I needed to. That was the whole purpose of the CT scan in the first place. And second of all, there's a lot of people that are stuck in the same situation right now. And I'm getting posts from people all over the country that are scared. They're scared to death because of their own circumstances or somebody that they love. If these rules were just made out of rationality and to be able to determine, okay, we've got this balance with this balance, this is completely imbalanced. We're shutting everything down. That means we are definitely going to have deaths happen because of it. Based on the other thought of, we might have some COVID patients. And the thing that I'm frustrated with is the hospital where Aaron was supposed to have that CT scan had 0 patients. They didn't have any pressure on them because of COVID patients. They had lots of pressure on them because of COVID rules. And what's frustrating is the rules aren't based on rationality. They're based on fear and insecurity. And when you make rules based on insecurity, you get bad outcomes. And we're seeing that all over. We're talking healthcare, but you can see it everywhere.
Now, since we've been well warned by health officials that we may soon see a second wave this fall of COVID-19, do you believe elective surgeries should be canceled just as they were in the lockdown? Drea Humphrey with Rebel News. Here at Rebel News, we bring you the other side of the story, even if that means the other ways people are dying indirectly from COVID-19 by the COVID-19 lockdown or the restrictions. If you would like to help support our independent journalism, please head to letusreport.ca. We appreciate your support.